Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a video for you about this little guy. This is the MBK Mini Rosalinda. And this is a really, really cool little knife, and one that I was very excited to take a look at. As some of you may know that they released the Rosalinda some time back, and that was one of my very, very favorite knives released last year. The quality that you're getting relative to the price you're paying is completely ridiculous, right? Even for an overseas-made knife, it is absolutely wildly ridiculously good in terms of quality and value, right? And so the Rosalinda really blew me away, but it is really big, right? If we do a size comparison here with the Spyderco Delica, we see here that the Rosalinda is big, right? Whereas, for instance, or the PM2, we can see this is closer to that PM2 size class. It is a big old freaking knife. And so as a result, although I love the Rosalinda, it wasn't a knife that I ended up carrying that much because that's just not my preference. So when I heard that they'd done a mini one of those guys, I was like, yes, please. And in fact, I reached out to the Monterey Bay Knives folks. I messaged Sanford, said, Sanford, the guy runs Monterey Bay Knives, hey, come on, can I take a look at one of these guys? He said, absolutely. He sent one along. He knows the deal, though. He knows I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk. He did still send it along. Nonetheless, we would normally assume this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, although actually that turned out not to necessarily be the case here, which I guess is an integrity move. I nonetheless will not let that affect the nature or the quality of my review. You would think after like 1,000 videos I'd be able to say that fluently, but here we are. Anyways, so what we're going to go on ahead and do today is take a look at this little guy, and I'll do some size comparison for you a little bit more broadly. So here it is against the full-size Rosalinda. Here it is against the Monterey Bay Knives EZC. Here it is against the Monterey Bay Knives Sea Otter, and so what we're going to see here is that it is around the same blade length as the Otter, just a little bit longer there. And then here it is against Monterey Bay Knives' newest piece, which I also got to take a look at. This is the Valor, and it's a little ridiculous. But anyways, we see that it's around the same size class, although it is a very, very different knife. So anyways, let's go on ahead and do what we've normally been doing, which is to take this little guy apart, right? So this is... yeah, it's a cool piece. That said, when I got it out of the box, the detent on this guy was a little light. It wasn't dangerous, right? It wasn't to the point where I was like, oh, no, screw that. I'm not carrying that. But it was light, right? It felt a little lighter than I would want the detent to be. Yeah, all the screws are T8. Nice. I appreciate that. And so it actually just happened to be the case that I was traveling up with the wife to Monterey, Monterey, California, of course, where MBK is based. And so while we were there, I stopped in at Sanford's, the little shop there, Carmel Cutlery, which is, by the way, a great little cutlery shop. If you're ever in the area, you should definitely check it out. He's got a pretty good selection of a bunch of stuff and pretty much everything MBK sells because, well, it's MBK. But anyways, I stopped by his little shop and he made some adjustments, mostly just kind of bending the lock bar a little bit, that brought the detent up a little bit more. I probably could have done that myself had I, not been about to go visit his region, but, it was convenient enough, and so he just did it right there in the shop. So that was the one kind of concern with it. The knife still has a slightly lighter detent than some, and so if you're looking for a super strong detent, this series, the Rosalinda as well as the Mini here, are not the strongest detents ever, but nonetheless, it's a really cool knife. One thing that's worth pointing out, and maybe you'll be able to see it here a little bit better, this is ZDP 189, but in fact this is a jacketed ZDP. So what we see here, if we look at the blade a little bit more carefully after I clean it off, what we see here is there is a little line on the blade right here, and then on the other side right here. This one is actually about symmetrical, which is pretty impressive, but you really shouldn't expect it to be perfectly symmetrical. But what you have here is you have another steel, I believe a 420 stainless, surrounding this ZDP. And so you put a softer steel on the outside there, and then the very hard steel in the core, right? And so what they've done here is use ZDP 189. This is a great steel. It's very good. It's also not the most stainless thing ever. So having a less stainless steel jacketed by a very stainless steel, not a bad idea. We can see here, this is a Ray Laconico design. So there you go, nicely engraved and whatnot. But that's kind of a cool approach, right? And jacketed, and that was the case, by the way, on the full size as well, right? You can see a similar jacketing effect. It is really just a mini version of the Rosalinda. If you're curious, by the way, about any of the tools, using, go ahead and use, go to nickshabazz.com/tools. You'll see a list of everything. And we'll go on ahead and we will put a little bit of lubrication here, using knife pivot lube here at the moment, but any of them work. And a little bit on the detent ball. And we'll go ahead and just drop this bearing back into place. Nice ceramic bearings. One thing that is worth noting is that Monterey Bay Knives has been including little packets with all the hardware, just extra versions of the hardware, which is a really, really nice little detail, right? And means that for long-term serviceability, you know, one of the screws of this stop pin falls off and rolls onto something, you just go to the pouch, you grab it, and you put in a new one, right? You're not having to email, you're not having to go back in the archives like, hey, do you have any of these left? This knife was released in 2024, and it's 2065, and all of us are AI now, or something. I don't know what's happening in 2065, but I'm not so sure I want to find out. Anyways, I digress. But anyways, see, you've got all that extra hardware in there, too. Use a little bit of thread locker on a stick there to pop everything back together. Put the pivot back in position here. And we'll go on ahead and do that with the back screws as well. Pretty simple construction here with the internal liner, which works quite well. And also means that you're going to have very consistent detent strength because you're not going to accidentally press on the lock bar. Liner locks do have some substantial joy to them, as well as a very nice finish, as well as the clip that we've sort of come to associate, I think, in a lot of ways with MBK. At least a lot of their overseas imports all have a very similar sort of clip. And let's see where we're at. That feels great. Sounds great. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, we're all set. So, everything's put back together. So what are my thoughts on this little knife? Go ahead and put this away. Basically, I feel like this is pretty damn good, right? One thing that I did not mention about the steel here is this is ZDP 189, right? I mentioned that already. On the website, he is saying the hardness of this is 66 to 67 Rockwell. I have not tested this. But that's a bold claim, right? That's a seriously hard steel. And in fact, Sanford has talked a little bit about how much of a pain in the neck that has been to do and to get right and everything. And so, like, yeah, I believe him. But wow, that's a lot. And so having this jacketing allows him to run it very, very hard with a little bit less fragility. That's kind of a beautiful thing, right? I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that it comes with some extra hardware. Just makes it a whole lot easier to, take it apart, carry it, and not worry so much about the knife that you paid good money for, not being able to be, serviced later on. That's a beautiful thing. I did mention already, and then I gotta say the design of this is great. I really like the Rosalinda design. The blade is a little thicker than I would like, generally speaking, right? It's, let's see here. I should probably also measure it, but the blade thickness on this guy is, I want to say, yeah, 3.3 millimeter or so. We can do better than that. But that's also the way that Ray Laconico often runs things, and so, hey, whatever. Not the end of the world. And the way that it is ground is pretty aggressive, right? It comes down to a reasonably thin edge there, even despite relatively thick stock. So, can't argue too much with it. But, that's definitely a thing. And they have included a sharpening choil, even though they do have this little stop down at the bottom here, which is something that I don't think everybody's going to love, but we should still get some good sharpenable life out of this, especially given that with that kind of hardness, you're not going to have to sharpen it that often. But anyways, I love this design. It's really nice in the hand. It feels very good in the hand. It works well. Having this little bit of flat on the top works very well. The ergonomics of opening it are beautiful. Very nice thumb stud, although this is very much favoring righties, right? There is not good access. I mean, I guess you could probably do it with your index finger to your left hand, but you can't swap the clip over, right? This is sort of a right hand first sort of knife. But it's just great. It's a really, really nice kind of thing. It's a little thick. It's a little on the heavier side. I'll throw it on a scale if I can find my scale. We are looking at here for approximately A little over 3 inches of blade, so if you have legal constraints at 3 inches, that's going to be an issue. But we're coming in here at about 3.8 ounces. Not the heaviest thing ever, but it's also not the lightest thing ever. But it is just really good. It's a good design. It works well. The ergonomics are great. It looks and feels great, too. Right? This, it's kind of hard to show off, but like if we compare that to a more conventional titanium finish, like this right here is an 80 20.5 Demco Knives Shock Cub. And what we see here is on this little bit of, that little bit of pillowing, right? You can see this is a contoured scale. This is not a flat scale at all. That little bit combined with a very nice blast ends up leaving a very nice optical effect, right? So it looks, frankly, better than your average stonewash titanium frame lock, right? That is nice. That works well. Having this little bit of backspacer, also classy, very demure, right? It's a very, very solid little piece, very mindful. I really am a big fan of it for carry. My complaints, as I mentioned, the detent out of the box definitely could have been stronger. That was a little bit on the weak side, and so that's something that I hope that they can work on in the future. My biggest issue with this knife, though, is, and this is a substantial problem. They have the Rosalinda, right? Here's the Rosalinda. They wanted to make a smaller version of it. And they went with Mini Rosalinda. People, Mike Rosalinda was right on the table. Mike Rosalinda, perfect, would have been excellent. Or maybe they're saving that for a little tiny version, right? Either way, come on, the fact that this is not the Mike Rosalinda, absolutely inexcusable. Unless there's a Mike Rosalinda coming down the road. But aside from those two things, the detent being a little bit light and the complete failure to name this guy appropriately, it's really, really good. And the thing that makes it best of all is the thing I haven't mentioned yet, which is the price. They're looking for $220 for this guy. Now, this is being made overseas, right? I believe this is being made with factories in China. This is... So that's going to be something that bothers some folks, but quality is about effort, not geography, and the quality is here. This feels really good. In fact, this feels very, very, very good. This feels like a knife that had I picked this up as a custom knife in Blade Show 2017 would have blown my freaking mind. Right? And so for it to now be a $220 production knife, and by the way, we're pretty used to perfection now in the knife market, and this is really pretty exceptionally well done. This factory is doing really, really great work. So I'm a big fan of that. But the price on this guy is really, really good for what you're getting. You're getting a pretty exotic steel, right, with the Sanmai, the double-coated sort of effect. You're getting a beautiful finishing, a beautiful finish, separately, a great design. I am, every day that I spend in the knife market, I tend to find myself liking Ray Laconico's work more and more. Originally, I thought, oh my God, it's so boring. And now I'm like, oh my God, it's so boring because it's so good, right? He does exactly what you need to. And the fact that this is a thumb stud rather than a flipper tab eliminates a little bit of his tendency towards pocket pecking. It's just a really, really good daily carry knife. And so for $220, sure, you can get better knives cheaper. Can you get better knives cheaper? This comes down to the debate of what exactly is better, right? I'm thinking, like, you get your PM2, you can get a really great knife cheaper than this. We'll put it that way, right? But, oh boy, is this pretty good for the price, right? So anyways, that's my feelings about this guy. This is a really great little knife. Right? This is a knife that I have really enjoyed carrying, and in fact, this is one of two knives that I brought on that trip. Since I was going to Monterey, I figured I'd just carry MBK stuff because that seemed like the thing. So I brought the River Otter here, and then I brought the Mike Rosalinda. And by God, it's a great piece. Completely good for carry. So this is a great knife. And in fact, I would go so far as to say, based on my carry experience, this is a gem. I haven't really been assigning that lately because I've been doing quick reviews, but I've spent a fair amount of time carrying this, and I feel like if I had done the full good, great, bad, and the ugly, and honestly, the bad and the ugly would be the weak detent, it's not great, and the lack of name, the lack of the right name, it's getting towards the ugly, but everything else is absolutely good to go. It's a great freaking knife. I'm a big fan of it, and if they're available, and frankly, if they come available in the future, you should seriously consider picking one of these guys up if you're looking for what they're setting out here. So anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.